The story of Irene Switzer, an Irish woman who worked in British intelligence during the Second World War, is one of paradox and obscurity. Born in the 1920s into a country that would officially declare its neutrality during the conflict, she came of age in a world increasingly defined by political extremes and global crisis. While most of her fellow citizens in neutral Ireland would watch the war unfold from a cautious distance, Switzer found herself drawn into the inner machinery of Britain's secret war. From code-breaking to the delicate world of espionage, she contributed to the Allied victory in ways that remained hidden for decades. Her life highlights both the moral complexities of Ireland's wartime stance and the quiet courage of individuals who chose a different path. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, plunging Europe into war, Ireland, newly independent and still deeply suspicious of Britain, declared a policy of neutrality. Eamon de Valera, Taoiseach of Ireland, believed neutrality best served the fragile Irish state, which had endured centuries of colonial domination and a bitter civil war only a generation earlier. For many Irish citizens, refusing to fight in Britain's war was a matter of national pride. Yet neutrality did not mean indifference. Some 70,000 Irish men and women would volunteer for service in the British Armed Forces during the war, while tens of thousands more labored in British industries to support the war effort. Among these unsung volunteers was Irene Switzer, whose talents and determination brought her into one of the most secretive realms of the conflict: intelligence. Details about Switzer's early life remain sparse, a reflection of both the secrecy surrounding intelligence work and the marginalization of women's wartime contributions in later accounts. It is known that she left Ireland for Britain in her youth, a decision not unusual at the time given economic difficulties at home. Educated, multilingual, and possessing a sharp analytical mind, she was recruited into British intelligence during the early years of the war. Women were increasingly sought for intelligence roles, particularly in cryptanalysis, translation, and clerical support that often concealed the true importance of their work. Switzer, like many of her contemporaries, would have undergone rigorous vetting before being sworn into secrecy. She was bound by the Official Secrets Act, a lifelong restriction that explains much of her later obscurity. Switzer's contributions lay primarily in two interconnected areas: code breaking and espionage support. Code breaking became one of the decisive arenas of World War II, exemplified by the legendary work at Bletchley Park, where British and Allied cryptanalysts cracked the German Enigma and Lorenz ciphers. Though figures like Alan Turing have become household names, the efforts of countless women, including Irish women like Switzer, were indispensable to the daily grind of intercepting, sorting, and deciphering enemy communications. Switzer's fluency in German and French made her particularly valuable. She worked with intercepted radio traffic from the German military, helping to identify patterns, confirm translations, and assist in constructing profiles of enemy operatives. Beyond linguistic skill, her ability to detect anomalies in transmissions, such as changes in phrasing or timing, provided critical leads for field agents engaged in counterespionage. Equally important was her support role in espionage networks. Britain's Special Operations Executive, SOE, sometimes described as Churchill's secret army, relied on accurate intelligence to coordinate sabotage, resistance, and clandestine communication across occupied Europe. Switzer's analysis of coded messages ensured that SOE agents could distinguish genuine transmissions from German playback deception operations, in which captured agents were forced to send false messages. A single misstep could doom entire resistance cells. The meticulous care of people like Switzer quite literally saved lives. To work in wartime intelligence was to live in silence. Switzer could not discuss her duties even with close friends or family, a burden that many veterans carried long after the war. The secrecy also meant that recognition rarely came. While soldiers received medals and public honor, intelligence workers were expected to fade back into civilian life. For an Irish woman, the silence was doubly heavy. Ireland's neutrality made open acknowledgement of service in the British war effort politically sensitive. Many Irish veterans returned home to indifference or even hostility. In some communities, service in the British forces was seen as a betrayal of Irish independence. Switzer therefore lived most of her life with her role unspoken, her achievements invisible to the public eye. After 1945, Switzer transitioned into civilian life, as did most of her colleagues. She lived through the second half of the 20th century with little fanfare, her contributions unknown beyond a small circle of fellow veterans. While some former Bletchley Park staff began to publish memoirs in the 1970s and 1980s, Switzer remained silent. It was only toward the end of her life, in the 1990s and early 2000s, that fragments of her story began to emerge. The lifting of restrictions on intelligence records in Britain allowed historians to reconstruct the vast machinery of wartime code-breaking and espionage. Though Switzer never sought the spotlight, her name began appearing in research notes and oral histories, often remembered fondly by colleagues as diligent, precise, and unflappable under pressure. Irene Switzer's life invites reflection on several wider themes in 20th century history. Much of the work at Bletchley Park and related institutions was carried out by women, often young and working far from home. Their contributions were underestimated during the war and marginalized afterward. Switzer represents this generation of women whose quiet brilliance made victory possible. Switzer's story complicates the neat narrative of Irish neutrality. While the Irish state remained neutral, individuals made their own choices, often at great personal risk. Switzer, like tens of thousands of her compatriots, chose to contribute to the Allied cause. Her life underscores how the boundaries of neutrality were porous and how ordinary Irish citizens played critical but unrecognized roles in the war. The world learned to celebrate figures like Alan Turing only decades later. For many intelligence veterans, secrecy meant a life lived in obscurity. Switzer's lack of recognition is a reminder of the human cost of clandestine service, the suppression not only of information but also of personal history. As the 20th century recedes into history, figures like Switzer risk disappearing from collective memory. Yet her story illustrates how individual acts of skill and courage contributed to the larger Allied victory. To remember her is to acknowledge the countless unnamed others who shared her fate. Irene Switzer was never a general, never a politician, and never the subject of parades or public accolades. Instead, she was something rarer, a woman who, in defiance of her nation's official neutrality, stepped into the shadows of wartime intelligence to perform work of immense importance. She helped break codes, supported espionage networks, and saved lives through her diligence and intellect. Her story reminds us that the history of the Second World War is not only the tale of famous leaders or dramatic battles, but also of individuals who quietly shouldered burdens in anonymity. Ireland's neutrality may have concealed her role, but history has begun to recover her name from the silence. In doing so, we honor not only Switzer herself but also the countless others whose contributions were hidden, uncelebrated, and vital. Irene Switzer's life is a testament to courage in the shadows, a reminder that even in an officially neutral land, there were those who could not stand aside as the world was consumed by war. She belonged to no parade ground, but to the unbroken line of unsung heroes who made victory possible.
Ireland's story is carved in stone, whispered in song, and carried through centuries of struggle and triumph. From the mysteries of Celtic standing stones to the echoes of Viking shores, the land remembers. Monastic ruins and round towers speak of faith and resilience. Castles and abbeys tell of conquest, defiance, and change. Through the Georgian age, elegant cities rose, while famine left silent fields and abandoned cottages. The people carried their hopes across oceans, and Ireland's voice echoed through the diaspora. Every age has left its mark, each ruin and ridge holding memory like an open book. At Emerald Chronicle, we bring these stories to life. Our short documentaries and visual archives uncover the myths, legends, and history that shaped Ireland's soul. From the battles of high kings and the Easter Rising, to the quiet strength of folklore passed from generation to generation, each tale is part of a greater whole. We explore Ireland's ancient myths, her heroic struggles, her cultural triumphs, and her enduring spirit. Every stone circle, every ruined tower, every whispered song reminds us that Ireland is more than a place. It is a story that refuses to be forgotten. Join us on this journey through Ireland's past, where history meets legend, and discover the voices of a people who shaped not only their island, but the world beyond it.